Namaskaram everyone. Welcome to today's talk on Union Budget 22-23. Honored to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Kishore N.K., Vice President, Finance, Meenakshi Group, Hyderabad. I'm sure that we will all feel enriched with money knowledge at the end of the session. We all want to know where money should go rather than wondering where money went. I extend a warm welcome to our Secretary and Correspondent, Professor M. Srinivas. Delighted to have you for the session, sir. I feel happy to welcome our chairperson, Professor M. Usha. Her presence completes us. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Shakuntala, sorry for interrupting. Just now I got the message from Economic Times, Dominic, saying that speaker is not able to hear
anything, please.
Speaker is not able to hear
anything.
Yeah. Shakuntala?
I'll check with Tirupati, sir.
It is audible to me.
Yeah, please. Yeah. But Kishore, sir, I'm able to hear your voice.
Able to hear?
But he is not able to hear us. That is what he's saying.
Kishore, sir, you have to check on your end.
No, can you make him co-host, Shakuntala?
I'll tell Tirupati, sir.
Yeah, we have to make Kishore sir co-host so that he will operate.
Dominic sir is informing me by message that I am audible, but I am not able to listen to hear any sound from that side.
Yeah, you are audible, sir. Sir, you are audible.
How do I take
Kishore sir is audible and we'll just make you co-host.
Hello, Kishore sir, are you able to hear us?
Shakuntala, he is asking us to give him 2 minutes time.
Yes, ma'am, we'll wait for it.
Yeah, but what is Tirupati saying?
It's a problem from his end.
Did he log in as co-host?
I'll check it out. Tirupati sir, did you make co-host?
Yeah, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. Now you're audible. I think there is some. I moved up with some settings. My colleague has helped me. Now it's set right. So we can start, ma'am, please.
Okay, Kishore, good afternoon. Once again, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah. Shakuntala, please go ahead with his introduction from the beginning.
Doesn't matter, ma'am.
And then we do it. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, it's okay, ma'am. It's okay, ma'am. Intro part we can skip because.
Kishore sir, just a minute and we'll be through it.
Yeah.
Namaskaram everyone. Welcome to today's talk on Union Budget 22-23. Honored to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Kishore N.K., Vice President, Finance, Meenakshi Group, Hyderabad. I'm sure that we all will feel enriched with money knowledge at the end of the session. We all want to know where money should go rather than wondering where money went. I extend a warm welcome to our Secretary and Correspondent, Professor M. Srinivas. Delighted to have you for today's session, sir. Welcome. I feel happy to welcome our chairperson, Professor M. Usha. Her presence completes us. Welcome, ma'am. Also welcome our in-charge principal, Dr. Jhansi, Director of SFC, Professor Nakula Reddy, Academic Coordinator, Dr. Karuna, IQAC Coordinator, Ms. Rajalakshmi. My hearty welcome to my dear colleagues, Shanti and Himabindu. Also welcome my fellow colleagues and dear students. Welcome one and all. Budgeting has only one rule, do not go over budget. Now, I request our chairperson, Professor M. Usha, to preside and continue with the proceedings. Professor Usha. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for his he'll enrich us with his experience and knowledge as Vice President Finance from the Meenakshi Group. So now, good afternoon, everybody. I extend a warm welcome for this session. Now, may I request our Principal in Charge, Dr. K. Jhansi Rani, to tell a few words about our college.
Good afternoon, madam. Thank you for the opportunity. I welcome once again on behalf of Andhra Sabha, Dr. Kishore sir, Meenakshi Group, Hyderabad. Thank you so much, sir, for your ready acceptance. Let me brief all of you about our college. Our Arts and Science College, Andhra Sabha, has been established by Dr. Durgabai Deshmukh Padma Vibhushan in the year 1968, mainly with arts and arts courses. Then it has been extended to commerce and sciences. Now we are flourishing under her umbrella, that is Andhra Sabha, which has got 29 institutions, majorly located in especially Telangana, 20, 8 in Chennai, and 1 in Andhra Pradesh. At present, in Andhra Arts and Science College, we are offering undergraduate courses and also postgraduate courses under autonomous status. We are having nearly 2,000 students in our college from various categories. So our teaching staff are very much dedicated towards academic aspects, research, and also consultancy. And our non-teaching staff is catering to the needs of students in various aspects. And we have BA courses with various combinations, and also commerce, become general, become business analytics, become computer applications with 3 sections, and also become tax procedures. And we have business management in our college, and various important aspects are covered for our management students under the coordinatorship of Shakuntala Jain, Mrs. Shakuntala Jain. And thanks to her for taking charge of management courses, and also Mr. Shanti for looking after entire commerce courses in our college, both undergraduate and PG. I welcome once again Dr. Nakala Reddy sir, Professor Nakala Reddy sir, for making all unaided courses a well-equipped and also academic standards, maintaining academic standards. Our Arts and Science College is catering to the needs of especially poorer sections of the society. And now we are getting almost creamy layer with lots of aspirations for the future. And I am happy to announce that many students of our college are applying for abroad universities. We are happy to tell you that. And our students are excelling in not only government jobs and also private jobs after completing their degrees here. With this note, I thank you one and all for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much. Usha ma'am, thank you ma'am. Over to you ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Jhansi, for introducing the college to our speaker. And most of us who logged in are familiar with the college. So I think Kishore sir is also familiar with our college because I met him earlier in some context. May I now request Professor Nakala Reddy sir to tell a few words about the program.
Professor Usha Madam, Chairperson, Andhra Sabha Arts and Science College for Women. Professor M. Srinivas sir, Secretary and Correspondent, Andhra Sabha Arts and Science College for Women. Dr. Jhansi Rani, Principal, Andhra Sabha Arts and Science College for Women. Dr. Karuna Devi, Academic Coordinator. Dr. Rajalakshmi Madam, IQSC Coordinator. And Dr. Kishore, NA, Vice President, Finance and Meenakshi Group. And Mrs. Shakuntala Madam, Coordinator BBA, Mrs. Shanti Madam, Coordinator BCom Unaided Programs, and Ms. G. Himabindu, Assistant Professor Economics, and other faculty members, and also students. Good afternoon to you all. And today we are here to understand the implications of Union Budget 22-23 proposals actually. Budget, you all know, in fact, annual financial statement, and it consists of estimated revenue and expenditure for the next financial year, and also proposed amendments to the tax laws. And budget document consists of revenue account and capital account. And revenue account, we can say revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. And capital account, we can have capital receipts and also capital expenditure. As per Article 112 of the Indian Constitution, Union government has to present budget to the Parliament, and it has to get approval for appropriation bill and also finance bill. As part of constitutional obligation, Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharamanji presented Union Budget 22-23 on 1st February 2022 and stated that this budget will serve as a foundation for next 25 years. In the budget proposals, they fix that economic growth rate target at 9.2% in real terms. And at the same time, to achieve this in 22-23 Union Budget, government identified 4 priorities. And these are: 1. Prime Minister Gati Shakti, and under this government identified 7 engines that drive Prime Minister's Gati Shakti. These are basically physical infrastructure in the form of roads, railways, airports, seaports, mass transport, waterways, logistics infrastructure. And second priority, it is inclusive development. And third priority, productivity enhancement and investment. And sunrise opportunities. Basically, sunrise opportunities means artificial intelligence, geospatial systems, semiconductors, space economy, genomics, and pharmaceuticals. In the same way, in the third priority, green energy and energy transition and climate action also included. And fourth priority, that financing of investments. And Union Finance Minister announced in her budget speech that the government decided to introduce digital currency in the coming days. You all know that bitcoins are there, and also non-fungible coins also there. They are all basically private money. Now the government actually wanted to introduce through Reserve Bank of India official digital currency as well as physical currency. And of course, all details our guest speaker will explain all those things, the implications, and also revenue part, and also expenditure part, and also the implications regarding the salaried class, particularly income tax laws, etc. All those things I don't want to touch upon. But finally, I want to say one thing, that all must understand the implications of budget proposals, because all in the sense rich and also poor will be directly or indirectly affected by the budget proposals. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all, madam.
Thank you, Professor Nakla Reddy. Kishore sir, Professor Nakla Reddy joined us as Director of Self-Finance Courses 1 year back, and he has been behind all these programs organizing. The idea is given by me, but the engine behind the organization is Professor Nakla Reddy. Kishore sir, I think I remember seeing you in Bhavan's college once. We shared the class, you were there, and I was impressed with your knowledge. And so I could recollect, but I didn't know until I saw your face that it is the same Kishore who. So thank you very much for joining.
Yes.
Now, if our correspondent, sir, Secretary Correspondent, Professor Srinivas joined us. He was sick some time back with COVID, but I'm very happy to see him back, jump into action. And today, I think he would like to speak a few words about the program. May I now invite Professor Srinivas, sir, to give his message. Good afternoon, sir. How are you, sir? Srinivas, sir. Srinivas, sir, I think you have to unmute. Srinivas sir has to unmute his. Can somebody call him and tell? Srinivas sir?
He is connecting back. He's connecting back.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Last time I met you was in Bhavan's college.
Yeah. So,
Otherwise,
very
you know
busy.
me, ma'am. You know me for long, since my 95 days in university, when I used to come by bicycle and then used to park. You know me since then. Just that you know thousands of students, you would have forgotten.
No. I can never forget.
I'm one of them.
The only thing is I should relate the face with name. That is the only weakness. I should be able to relate the face with name. Otherwise, I remember you. Yeah, you were one of the brightest lots of that we had on the university.
Yes, ma'am. You're among the first to congratulate me when I stood all India 5th rank holder in JRF. In fact, those days.
Yes, Kishore.
Augility sir, Surender sir, yourself, and Davar sir. Very few, hardly among the first 4-5 you are among them to appreciate me and congratulate me for the achievement.
That's a great achievement, Kishore. We are very happy for you. So, in spite of being very busy, you joined. I don't think Professor Srinivas is able to correct. Can we begin with your lecture and then we can ask you to join? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
So, most welcome, Kishore. Yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks.
You can go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, ma'am.
Actually, Kishore, I forgot. Bindu is ready, sitting over there to introduce you. I'm extremely sorry. May I request Himabindu, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, to introduce the speaker, please. I'm extremely sorry.
Yes.
Bindu.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. A very good afternoon to you all. I'm G. Himabindu, Lecturer, Department of Economics. I'm profoundly delighted to take an opportunity to introduce today's chief guest, Dr. Kishore N.K., Vice President, Finance, Meenakshi Group, Hyderabad. Dr. Kishore has more than 25 years of experience in finance, legal, HR aspects. His qualifications include MBA, MCOM, ACS, LLM, and PhD. He served as a director, committee member, and advisor at various organizations and has been holding several honorary and professional positions. He has experience in banking, power, infrastructure, and real estate sectors. He is a recipient of Best CFO Awards, including from Economic Times Group. He is a resource person for various autonomous, regulatory, and accredited organizations. He addressed various forums in and abroad in India. He has been championing for financial literacy through a social venture named FLAI. Dr. Kishore guided more than 500 projects, works, and has published many articles in reputed publications. Dr. Kishore traveled widely in India and abroad. Thank you so much, Usha ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Himabindu, for introducing our guest speaker. May I now request Kishore to go ahead with his...
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
First of all, my sincere thanks to my elder sister, Professor Usha ma'am. She has been teacher, sister, and guide, who has motivated many students, including myself. And thanks to the entire leadership team at Andhra Mahila Sabha. Thanks to Economic Times Group, and thanks to Dominic sir for the nice connect. Thanks to Professor Krishna Kumar sir for the encouragement and reconnecting me with my old teachers and the campus second home or the first home. With that brief small disclaimer, it goes without mentioning. Yeah. Because the connect is through Times Group, where we were all encouraged to access their library free of cost. And some of the days we were also allowed to stay in their guest house without paying anything as a research scholars from Osmania Institute. The privilege was extended by them generously, more particularly by Indu a couple of years back. Let me give you a brief intro about Economic Times also. This is a 192 years old group with multiple verticals, various media publications. Most of them are known to you, like Femina, Filmfare Awards, Times of India, Economic Times, and Romedy, Zoom, Ghana.com, Magic Bricks, etc. One point which many of you may not be knowing, yes, professors would know, you may not be knowing, is Times Group has been a very active private equity investor, a venture capital investor. It is a silent investor. It has been making huge investments into various startups, technology companies, and until now, it has made investments in more than 850 startups. And the names are here to see. You can understand the most of the successful names which are floating in the market are part of this list. It could be Snapdeal, Uber, Airbnb, Big Basket, Baiju, Flipkart, Future Group, Gitanjali, Rasna, Ocean Beverages, All Health, Falcon, and you name one of the popular successful startup companies. It finds place in the list of investees. That's the support Times Group has been accepted as a part of its social responsibility. Now the group is led by Mr. Vinny Jain and Sanjay. Of course, their daughter, their only daughter, Krishna, about 25, 27 years old girl, she's heading the investments division. She's just like one of you, a management graduate, and been heading this wing very successfully. And everyone can have access to that if you have a right product, right concept, idea, and you just need to pass alpha and beta tests to gain her audience and convince her to make investments into your venture. Professor Nakula Reddy sir has already given a good introduction and base of discussion about the budget. Let me give a brief about how a budget is drawn. Budget, as you all know, is a numerical plan. The way you prepare a budget for one of your college events is the same as union budget is also drawn. This is drawn, in fact, in a more scientific way with one of the ERP systems. As you know, CBS, the core banking solutions of banking sector, is run on Finacle, LMS, etc., etc. 95 to 99% on Finacle, and the income tax software is all run on Voltas, and Edgar is other software which is used for the backend process of SEBI. Like that, UBIS, which is one of the proprietary software ERP system developed confidentially, exclusively for the purpose of Department of Revenue, for the purpose of budget, is used by budget team. In the budget team, this UBIS will be a real-time software which reflects on the screens of the budget team as and when a number is punched, as and when a number is fed, modified, it will reflect on their screens. Why I'm stressing so much on UBIS? I have to take you to my days. Back then, when I was moving around in the campus on my bicycle without a lock, when we had to understand how a budget is drawn, a budget circular would be issued about 24 months before by the finance minister, the department, and in response to the circular, the details will be collected by the ministries and will be compiled and will be submitted to the Department of Revenue. The lag of the information, the data, what would be submitted would be at any point of time, not latest than 4 years. Sometimes it could be 5.5, 6 years older also. Imagine current year budget being drawn on data which is as old as 5 years could have far less effectiveness and far less productivity than a budget which is of hardly 3.5, 4 months data old or based, which is possible because of UBIS. The sequence is as follows. A budget circular is issued in mid-September of this year for a budget to be presented next year for next year budget. The pre-budget meetings will be held in the middle of October. What does this pre-budget meeting mean? Pre-budget meeting is basically to justify on a zero budget basis, justify each of the items that are included in the budget and justify the entry, justify the volume, justify the amount, and justify the sequence or the schedule of release of the amounts. The revised estimates will be discussed for the last year budget. In the current year budget preparation exercise, the last year budget's revised estimates will also be discussed. Once this exercise is completed, by the end of November, mostly complete information will be received. How? By feeding in UBIS. Unlike earlier, where you used to receive from A1 to A221 and from T1 to T221, all fax copies, which would be cyclostyle and sometimes would be typed, sometimes would be computerized, and then all manually prepared. Imagine that exercise contrasting with one real-time UBIS where it is visible. Something which is fed in is modified. There is a track which shows what is modified and why it is modified. A justification call will be made to the concerned department to get the information about what is authentic, what was fed, why was it corrected, and the justification for it. Once the complete information up to that period is received in November, provisional statement of budget estimates is drawn by mid of December. Statement of budget estimates is drawn by mid of December. Along with the statement of budgetary estimates, all the ministries and departments should also submit detailed demand for grants for all the schemes, umbrella schemes, central government sponsored schemes, central government schemes, then sector schemes and components. For all of them, detailed demand for grants will have to be submitted by mid of December. By the end of December, the first round allocation would have been made by the Department of Revenue budget team, depending upon the basis of their previous budget's revised estimates. Then the final budget allocation, after a bit of moderation, revisiting, revision, and if there is any request for modifications, adjustments, considering all these adjustments, the post-adjusted final budget allocation will be completed by mid-January end of current year for current year's budget. Then, of course, the budget is presented as we see on 1st of February. Now, earlier it used to be towards the end, and even before it used to be much later. While this UBIS exercise is going on, there are certain highlights which deserve our attention. What are those things? The allocation and expenditure of the items up to 31st March of the last year will have to be presented to give real-time first-hand information to the finance minister to understand what's budgeted, what was allocated, what was demanded for release, what was released, what was spent, what remained unspent, and what remained undisbursed. These details will give a great insight for the Department of Revenue, for the budget team, to understand what is the justification of the amounts to be released, what is the justification of the heads to be included, and if there are any demands or complaints that the funds weren't disbursed, funds weren't sanctioned, allocated, what is the status vis-a-vis the actual record. So the record and the actual happening, what is accounted for, can be compared and appropriate actions can be taken. Similarly, as we spoke a while before, zero-based budgeting, which is one of the kinds of the budget what you would have studied in one of your management papers, is the actual practice that happens even in India. That is the reason why the reason for continuing ahead, the reason or the need for a grant in aid, and why specific component need not be wound up, should not be wound up, will be sent as a memo call, will be answered with all the justification, which means while there is a list of items from the past year budget, the list need not be sacrosanct. Each of the items needs to be unlisted anew, afresh, as if it is introduced now with all the justification, having realized, evaluated, and accounted for. This gives scope for a budget in the lines of zero-based budgeting. So this exercise has got the scope and potential to weed out unnecessary items which are continuing as a matter of history or legacy and are given some sanction because an item is present in the list. The last year budget, which was presented on 1st of February 2021, had budgetary estimates, budgetary estimates. whatever, on 1st of February 2021. When the budget circular was issued in September, mid of 2021, and when the final allocation is made in December 2021, it is quite easy, rather quite possible for the government to look at what is the status of 21-22 budget, which is captured and reflected and stated, accounted for as revised estimates up to December, which means by then around 9 months, 10 months, 9 months is already done. Therefore, you have the scope to revise the budget estimates of 2021-22 in the month of December 2021. That is how the revised estimates of the budget are drawn, which are more practical, more realistic, and more real time. Then the review and modification requests, which are made on whatever accounts they are made for modifications to the already allocated, already justified amounts, will be taken up on a case-to-case basis if the justification is convincing, is approved, and the amount will be allocated with the necessary adjustments. Most of the justifications usually come with replacement of schemes, intershifting of funds, or increasing the size of one scheme or one component, or decreasing other components. Those all are inter se adjustments which wouldn't require any detailed justification or explanation. But should there be an additional allotment, this has to go sometimes from public account, sometimes from contingency account also, unlike from the consolidated fund. So as we all know, in a budget, there will be 3 accounts which are drawn up internally, and the funds would go into consolidated fund. As Professor has explained in his introductory talk, that this being a finance bill, money bill, this needs approval of the parliament before any money, any amount is transferred or is being spent. Therefore, the consolidated fund is an approved fund which receives all the money that is approved, considering finance bill as a money bill, and that amount can be spent as per the scheme, as per the component, as per the sector-wise allotment. Should there be any additional component to be taken, that needs to be accommodated only in the contingency fund. Sometimes in the public account fund, if that head could accommodate, but generally in the contingency fund only. That is the significance of this review, modification, request, and justification, and sometimes post-allocation adjustments also. From this year, as you have seen, Honorable Finance Minister, as per their earlier promise, introduced a new budgetary document, which is declaring the status of budget announcements made last year. As on today, what is the status of budgetary announcements last year is being made public for transparency, and for this, the direction of budget program, the volume of budgetary amount, and what is spent or what is the status of amount being spent. Having known on your own what is budget, having understood a bit about what is budget from the monetary economics point of view, let us also look at some of the points what we need to understand whenever you look at union budget. These are few of them. GDP growth rate. GDP growth rate is absolutely sacrosanct from the economic point of view. Why do we need to understand? You are all future managers, therefore it needs a bit of more elaboration. I'll talk in simple economic terms. When a business is operating in India, there is a platform in India on which the business is operating, in which the business is operating, and the business is poised and is supposed to earn a profit rate of at least GDP growth rate. If any business isn't capable of earning at least GDP growth rate as its profitability rate, then it is either inefficient or either subsidizing the other businesses in the economy, or maybe the economy itself as a whole though. Therefore, because India has a normative growth rate of 7.5%, 7%, because a developed economy like US or Europe has got GDP growth rate of 2.5%, 2.35%, capital flies from those economies to an economy like India. It goes without further explanation that a business operating in US needs to expect a minimum return or an average normative return of 2.5% only. There are cases where they could earn 15%, 10%, or even higher. But the normative return, the platform will allow you to earn an average return of its GDP growth rate. Contrast it with a business which operates in India. It is poised. It has got a platform and scope to make a normative return of 7.5%, 8%. Because there is an alpha margin of 5.5%, capital flies from the low GDP growth rate economies to underdeveloped, developing emerging market economies where the GDP growth rate is generally higher because of their development nature. That is the significance behind GDP growth rate. And the budget also gives us explanation about the expenditure which is being committed and incurred for asset creation. Asset creation is quite important because the welfare spending will only keep the economy running, but it is the assets which are created that add to the employment creation, that add to the earning power or the additional GDP growth rate for the economy in the coming years, and that create value and wealth for the economy for all the stakeholders in the economy. Similarly, expenditure for provisions and welfare is listed out in the budget. This explains last 2 years, the budget was more focused on health and welfare. We were concerned not about a building to be created, not about a road to be laid, not about a gas plant or power plant to be generated, but about the healthcare spending what government was serious about, because we were all in that requirement because of whatever COVID situation it was. Therefore, expenditure for provisions welfare also has its own significance given the state of economy we were in. And the quantum and burden of fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the darling of any budget. After you speak the word budget, next promptly comes another word which is fiscal deficit. Without understanding what a fiscal deficit is, there is no understanding about budget. Understanding is incomplete. So the deficit, quantum and the burden is also explained in the budget. Influence on inflation levels is perceived by you and me, by professors who would explain us. The sectoral balance is assessed by economists and experts. The employment creation is promised by the government and is understood, perceived by the industry and by the educated lot. The tax collection mechanism, wherever there is a new levy, wherever there is a modification in the levy, wherever there is a modification in the pattern of tax levy, tax collection mechanism will be detailed, will be explained by the department, by the ministry. And does this budget augur well for the financial markets or not will be understood and responded by money market and capital market. As you all see, all the bond market players will try to see where is the 10-year G-Sec 6.8% G-Sec moving to, and all others who are actively tracking or playing in capital markets and the neutral lot like you and me will all see the response of the stock markets to the budgetary announcement made by the government. So these two markets, with the balance in opposite directions or in tandem, will give us a hint how well have the financial markets received the budget, and is this budget understood as promoting the financial markets or not. And also, the foreign countries will also signify their response. How? By way of withdrawing their FPIs, by way of retaining their amounts in the BRR window, by way of acquiring foreign exchange from their local accounts, local constituents accounts. They respond and show how FPIs are responding to Indian budget. These are what we need to broadly look at to understand the budget. What are budget documents? There are 4 budget documents. 1, annual financial statement, which is the budget. Professor explained you the components of AFS. Although he didn't title it, he explained what is the state, what are the contents of this, which includes revenue and expenditure, which we'll see in the next slide. Then recollect our discussion. Detailed demand for grants need to be submitted by all the ministries, departments, and the specific organizations, central sector organizations. Whenever they submit their budgetary estimates requiring grantee rates, requiring additional equity allotment, requiring any loans or any other support. That is more like an internal document, although is shared for the public at large to have a view. Then comes finance bill. Finance bill is the essence of budget. It is the bill what states, what explains the scope for the revenue to the government. So what is the revenue to the government and how the government intends to collect this revenue is explained in the finance bill. We are concerned about the finance bill because the taxation, be it personal taxation, be it corporate taxation, be it the taxation that relates to imports and exports are all laid out in the finance bill. And of course, it goes without stating that GST is also part of that. Then the last and the most important budget document, which is fiscal policy statement. As you all know, every country is bound by the fiscal responsibility and budgetary management legislations, which each country has passed by virtue of the global pact. You are bound to declare what is the fiscal deficit you intend to achieve, maintain, and underwrite, and what budgetary measurements you intend to take to keep this fiscal deficit at that level. At the moment, 3% is allowed as a deficit, fiscal deficit, under Indian FRBM Act, which means for the current year budget, you can have 3% fiscal deficit. Deficit not on the budget amount, deficit on the Indian GDP. Now you would understand Indian GDP is a floating number. It's an estimate still. While budget is an approximate estimate, it is an estimate, it is more a projection because you target to achieve this budget. Whereas GDP is more a projection, not an estimate. Even if it is called as an estimate, it may or may not be achieved. There is no target to achieve the GDP, what you will target. But the budget needs to be achieved, failing which there could be higher deficit which you have to fill with other measures. Therefore, the fiscal deficit of 3% is on GDP in terms of 3% on GDP, but the amount is considered as a deficit amount in the budget. It could be slightly technical, but the seniors would understand. And when we look at the deficit statement, you may understand a bit more. Then there are other documents which are called explanatory documents. Expenditure budget, it explains what all are expenditure. Receipt budget, self-explanatory. Expenditure profile, to which sector what amount is being allocated, spent, etc. Budget at a glance, how is the rupee coming in, how is the rupee going out, is explained there. Then finance bill needs to be accompanied by a memorandum which explains what clause in the Income Tax Act is being replaced, what clause in the GST Act is being replaced, what clause in these acts are being modified, etc. to give the power, the teeth to the department, failing which they will not be able to levy the tax, collect the taxation. Then the most important thing is output outcome monitoring framework. Output outcome monitoring framework helps the public at large, helps the CAG, helps the government department, helps the media, helps you and me and economists to understand how is the output outcome monitored, what framework monitors. For example, your KPIs, your key performance indicators could be the marks what you get, the participation you have in all the events, your attendance in your college, your behavior in your fighting, and the last day, the peer evaluation what you all submit. Those are your KPIs. Similarly, there is a framework which is instituted in the government which has to be adopted to measure the output outcome of each of the features of the budget. Now you understand how important it is. And the key features of budget. As Professor explained, each budget could have a focus area. Current year focus area is capital account expenditure. Last 2 years focus areas were health. Before that it was rural development. Before that it was infrastructure. Much before that it was the sectoral balance. So each of the budget can have its own focus area depending upon the current state of economy and the interface what we have with the world at large. Implementation of budget announcement. You may recollect, I made a mention that from the current year, this L as a budgetary document is included, which explains the status of budgetary announcement made in the last year budget. So that explains what is the status. And interestingly, let me share one of my interesting observation, because this is a new document more than the other documents. I read this document with a bit more care, and I was surprised of 1.5 lakh crores what were committed for the budgetary announcements in the last year. Hardly 400 crores is spent for the additional budgetary announcements. Most of the others were all stuck with the approvals from the state, from the center, the committee approvals or the ministerial approvals, etc. Now you can imagine what kind of challenge Honorable Finance Minister would be having, in spite of being FM, what kind of challenge she herself must be having to get the approvals from the bureaucratic economy we are in. In spite of sanctions, allotments, the monies could not move out because of the pending approvals. Most of the comments were approval pending, meeting pending, framework approved, DPR not yet submitted, DPR is pending for approval, committee meeting just called, committee yet to meet, committee met and yet to approve. So those are all really so painstaking that in spite of commitment, they could not be achieved. This is the budget what Professor Usha ma'am spoke, Professor Nakul Reddy sir spoke, and all of you are looking eagerly to understand. Numbers can narrate if only you have interest and if you can love them. Let's see the stud, the headline stud. There are 4 studs. Stud 1, 2020-21 budget. Actuals are presented here as achieved, as recorded and out of the record. 21-22 budget estimates as drawn and presented on 1st February 2021. This is as drawn and presented on 1st February 2021. Recollect our discussion? December, there is a scope for revising these budget estimates. Accordingly, in December 2021, these budget estimates are revised as per the then trend, as per the then information from UBIS, and they are all revised. So these are more realistic as budgetary amounts for 21-22 because these are revised from the realistic point of view. And then comes the current year information, which is budget estimates for 22-23. Now let us look at these numbers rightly. Recollect our discussion. We were talking about one of your annual events. You want to felicitate one of your batchmate who got an award, gold medal, or one of your or a freshers party or a farewell party or whatever, or a feat, some name. What do? You have a practice of listing out all items. We are 80 students, refreshments about 40 rupees each, so and so amount. Then we need a bit of decoration, electricity, mics, and stage set, etc. And we have our professors whom we need to felicitate. So a shawl, a garland, and a pen, book, water bottle, etc. And we have some chief guests coming, a bit of felicitation for them, all those things. And we have some contingency to be kept idle, handy, in case there is any surprise element. After all these things are drawn, you arrive at the expenditure what cannot be compromised any further. After this expenditure, the minimum expenditure is drawn, then you look at how do you mobilize the funds. Each of you will think, okay, let us contribute 400, 500 rupees from each of our wallets and let us see where do we stand. If there is a surplus, you will up some of the features in your expenditure list. If there is a deficit, you sit and you brainstorm and you understand whom do we approach. What do? You have your strategy. Your professors will guide you. Go to all the shops, go to all the companies, go to all the business establishments which are located in and around our university, our institute. These are part of our ecosystem. They are benefited from their presence in our ecosystem, and therefore they are justified to contribute whatever they could to this program. Then you exhaust that. Then you go to other companies which are operating and are dependent on you. Then you go to some other companies. That is how you enhance the scale of collecting money. And finally, you may even borrow from the next year collecting amount. Out of the corpus, what is put in the students' functions account, you will draw some amount, promising to your professor that ma'am will replenish that out of our next month event, whatever. Same is the exercise which is done in the union budget also. The expenditure is drawn first on revenue account, which is the welfare and the salaries, the admin, etc. Then the interest payments which have to made for the last years and before last, all past years borrowings and outstanding, and the granting aids which you would release for capital asset creation, and the infrastructure programs or the projects what you have launched which need the funding that is drawn up. So this makes up the total expenditure estimate. Once this estimate is made as budget estimate, then you come to this side of your revenue receipts. What is the present tax scale? Do we need to increase the tax scale rates? Can we include some more items into the tax net? Can't we afford that? Okay, we'll continue that. Then what is the net tax revenue, non-tax revenue that we get? Something like non-tax revenue is generally interest amounts, dividend amounts, or any other regular receipts what government will get, royalties, etc., license fees, etc. That is all non-tax revenue. Then the capital receipts is the balancing section. How is it balancing? Recovery of loans. This happens in the usual course of the loans what you have sanctioned as a central government to state governments, to central public sector entities, or to cooperative sector entities. Then comes the possibility of the borrowings as per your FRBM limits, the possibility of your borrowings as per contractual and sanctions that IMF may have imposed on India, as per which you would have drawn some support in the form of SDR, in the form of dollar loan, and has spent for infra or other purposes. Then comes this as a balancing figure, practical balancing figure. What is this? You will target other receipts. What are these other receipts? It could be divestment, which means sale of equity in the public sector entities. It could be sale of lands. It could be sale of government assets like spectrum or whatever. And you will make up the balance. This is how, theoretically, this is the balancing figure. Practically, this is the balancing figure. This is how the revenue is estimated. And we're talking about a budget, which is more like a statement, which is more like a balance sheet. It needs to balance. Every balance sheet tallies, be it Enron balance sheet, Satchem balance sheet. They need to tally whatever it has, whatever they have. Therefore, these two tallies, total receipts, total expenditure. However, of this is the fiscal deficit what we spoke about. Let us look at these things and we complete the deficit part as well. There are 5 kinds of deficit what we need to understand whenever we understand about a budget. Number 1, budgetary deficit. Every deficit is a budgetary deficit. But from the practical point of view, from the economist's point of view, when a person says budgetary deficit, when Honorable Finance Minister speaks to your professor asking for views about the options to fill the budgetary deficit, what both the ladies meant is not about these borrowings. It is about minting additional money because borrowings are identified, exhausted. Divestment opportunities are identified, exhausted. And additional grants are tried to be tapped but could not be done to the required extent. And there is no other way to meet the budgetary estimate than by minting additional money. Of course, now we are all mostly into electronic money. From the MO, reserve money, to the M3, broad money, it's all mostly electronic money. So the 28 lakh crores, what we're seeing as cash flow versus close to 35 lakh to 40 lakh crores budget. How is the balance funded? All electronic money. And GDP of 3.32 trillion is all moving on electronic money. The currency in circulation in print is hardly 28 lakh crores. Now you can imagine 92, 93% would all be only in electronic format, moving in and down, although not regularly. Therefore, if there is any deficit which could not be met, even by way of borrowing, Finance Minister would recommend for crediting additional electronic money or for printing currency notes. Printing currency notes is my age term, my sister's age term. When we were all learning, when we were all discussing, we used to think about minting money. Today it is on crediting additional electronic money. But the purpose and the objective and the influence in the economy is the same, whatever be the mode. Next, revenue deficit. So axiomatic, self-explanatory, revenue deficit. The revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts is revenue deficit. However, there is a revenue item which is practically not a revenue item. Grants in aid which are released every year and are listed as a revenue item because they are annual and perennial, if and when they are funding capital asset creations, need to be considered as capital expenditure only. Therefore, from the revenue deficit, the grants and aid which is used and released for capital account or capital asset creation is deducted. So the 9.90 lakh crores minus 3.17 lakh crores gives you the effective revenue deficit, which stands at 6.73 lakh crores. Then comes the most important thing of all what we spoke about, which is fiscal deficit. This is what you are concerned as a future manager. This is what Professor Ma'am is concerned as an economist. This is what I'm concerned as a professional in the industry. Why? This is the amount which government is borrowing effectively from the market. Effectively from the market. Contrast this number. This is so small, but it can cause ripples in the market. Why? Let me give you an example. The last year, borrowings by the corporates in the market from commercial paper window, one of the instrument was something like 22 lakh crores. Can you imagine? 22 lakh crores. Round this to 20 lakh crores, round that to 20 lakh crores. That is the magnitude of borrowing from the private sector. If that is the case, why is this small amount bothering us so much? Because it is the government borrowing which will set the pace of interest rates in the market. If government borrows more, the cost of funds in the market will rise high. Whom do you give a loan? Would you give a loan to Dr. Kishore, who is a pauper, or would you give a loan to government, which is more like a sovereign guarantee, and then you hold it, you encash it anytime? You prefer the government because it is risk-free. There is no credit risk, there is no market risk, there is no liquidity risk. Whereas any loan to a private party will entail multiple risks, including the ones what we spoke about. Therefore, fiscal deficit is a big matter of concern. We just told you 6.4% of the GDP is a fiscal deficit, what is now listed, and 16,61,196 crores is targeted to be borrowed by the government from the market to fill the deficit of the budget. Primary deficit is 16,61 minus 3,17, which is, minus 9,40, which is, now, what is fiscal deficit? Fiscal itself means current year, the financial year. This is the deficit what we are filling by borrowing. When do you intend to repay this? Not this year, next year or coming years, which means current year you have a deficit of 16,61,000 crores. From this, if you deduct interest paid on the past year borrowings, what is this interest? Interest paid on the past year's borrowings doesn't relate to current year. Therefore, from the fiscal deficit, if you deduct the past year borrowings, what you get is the primary deficit, which you should be really concerned about. But this is an economic number. The most important number is always fiscal deficit only. Let's quickly look at how a rupee comes in and how a rupee goes out. Every rupee that what you are collecting as receipts is in this format. 35 paise borrowings, 15 paise corporation tax, the income tax paid by the companies, income tax, capital gains tax, etc. Income tax paid by the individuals and HUFs, 15 paise. Customs on some of the items which aren't yet subsumed into GST. Something like cars have got additional customs duty now, imported cars, imported luxury watches, imported luxury items, imported makeup kits have all got these customs items like that. Then union excise duties. After the excise is subsumed to GST, still there are some items which are outside GST, like your fuel, like your tobacco products, etc. That gets you 7 paise, substantial amount, lot of contribution. And GST, 16 paise. Of all the taxes, it is GST which is the major contributor. Non-tax revenue, we discussed. Non-tax revenue is, or it comprises of, interest and dividend receipts and license fees, etc. Then non-debt capital receipts. What is this non-debt capital receipt? Sale of land, sale of license, sale of spectrum, sale of equity investments of the government in the public sector entities, in the banks, in the insurance companies, etc. So the 65,000 crores, what we have seen as expected proceeds from the divestment in LIC is by virtue of LIC IPO, which is the hot topic in the economic market now. Where does this rupee go? 9 pice to centrally sponsored schemes, 15 pice to central sector schemes. Centrally sponsored scheme is an example of housing scheme. Some of the national highway roads, some of the healthcare project programs. These are all sponsored by center, partly contributed by state. Total amount is being spent here. Central sector schemes. This scheme is totally by center. For example, MNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. That's a central sector scheme. Center releases all the amount. State government have to claim, receive, and then spend it. But the whole money is spent by the central sector only. Interest payments. Interest payments for the loans, what we have seen. The 9,50,000 odd, what you have seen here, 9,90,000 odd is the interest amount. 9,40,000 is the interest amount. That is this 20 pice. Defense. Subsidies, 8 pice. And transfers from the union government to the state governments happen on 3 accounts. 1 on the schemes, 2 on the state's share of taxes and duties as per the registered offices which the state bore in the jurisdiction, and also from the recommendations made by the Finance Commission as per the equity rules which are laid out by the government as per the constitution, that the amounts need to be disbursed to the states as per the schedule. These are the 3 heads under which states broadly get their funds. Finance Commission under the transfers 10 pice, states share of tax and duties is 17 pice, pensions self-explanatory 4 pice, other expenditure 9 pice. Okay. How is deficit finance? That we understood. It is by virtue of borrowings, multiple type of borrowings. So why this is included is small savings, provident funds. Let us say one of our young friend took up a job and she contributes to her provident fund. When do you think she would draw it? After 25 years, 30 years, maybe when she retires. So what is this? It is as patient as an equity capital is. Government will not or need not pay substantial part of these amounts on a yearly basis. Whatever they pay is after 30 years for a contribution which accreted over a period of 30 years. Therefore, it is the most patient capital, and the government will have less pressure in redeeming such kind of capital sources. This we discussed. Okay. The goals of this current budget. So, Professor has given a bit of introduction, good introduction about this part. Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Finance Minister have stated that today we are at 75th independent Indian regime, and in next 24 years, India becomes 100 years independent India. So the next 24 years, they call it as Amrit Kal, and they say the current year budget is more a directional budget than a number budget or a temporary budget or for the current year budget. What did they state? They said the focus of the budget is on growth and all-inclusive welfare. It is to promote the technology-enabled development and energy transition. Energy transition includes your electrical vehicles and the low carbon things, spectrum, etc. Climate action, yes, all of you have been reading the news. You are bound for the Hague Convention, for the Paris Pact, and as per the Paris Agreement, you need to reduce the carbon gas house emissions and the carbon footprint. Therefore, you are promoting the electric vehicles, etc. And the digital initiatives. And the virtual cycle starting from private investment, but crowded in by public capital investment. What is this crowded in now? After the situation, privately worried to make an investment. When do they worry? When do they come forward? When there is already some money flowing into the economy and some contribution happening to the projects or to the business. How does it happen when no private is willing to come forward? Public has to take the initiative. Public has to take the initiative and public has to start spending. That is the reason why government has announced 25,000 kilometers being laid out in the current year, which translates to about 68 kilometers per day. 68 kilometers per day into about 14-15 crore rupees per kilometer per capex, which translates to close to 1,000 crore rupees. So 1,000 crores being spent by the government every day gets released into about 212, 220 various sectors, and it goes into employment creation, wage payment, it goes into purchase of various raw materials. The whole of the economy gets instantly fueled. with huge reserve money flowing and money multiplier ratio between M0 reserve money to M3 broad money touching higher levels upward of 5.2, 5.3 against 4.87, 4.9 in the back end days. Therefore, starting public investments, attracting private investments as a follow-on measure is called crowded in. Now, kindly recollect, dear future managers, kindly recollect, we made a mention that the fiscal deficit is not only concerned for the government, for us, for the market, for everyone. Why? If government is borrowing more, you and I as private enterprise will not be able to borrow much in the market, or if you want to borrow, we have to borrow at a higher cost, not at a benign cost. That is crowded out. The borrowing market, the financial markets are crowded out by the government. If government is borrowing more, which means they are crowding it out with their presence, sending us out. Here it is crowded in, which means public will start the investments and will stop their investments. Private join the bandwagon and to catch on in the bastion of making more and more investments and reaping the benefits and creating or running the virtuous cycle. Yeah, we are nearing, but this deserves a bit of this and another slide deserve a bit of discussion. The focus of the whole program. It identified 16 ministers and departments which have to work together on a real-time digital portal to weed out, to eliminate the delays of interministerial communications, interministerial approvals for every project or most of the projects. That include about one digital platform, two interconnection among all the departments, which included the focus on roadways capacity increase, railway transportation cargo capacity to be increased, and renewal capacity to be increased by 2000. Of course, there's a directional budget to 25, and 200 new airports, heliports, and water aerodromes are being studied in the DPR stage. Transmission network through Power Grid Corporation of India Limited to be enhanced to achieve 4.5 lakh circuit kilometers and 4G connectivity to the villages, while 5G connectivity spectrum is being auctioned, and around 20 mega food parks to facilitate food processing and to reduce the wastage of the food from 98% odd now to about 64% as a target. That is broadly Gati Shakti plan. This is considered to be one of the best plan ever happened in the Indian economy. If implemented, that could give those benefits, and also applauded by most of the other countries as well. The priorities are explained by the professor. In fact, I take a skip of it. Yes, the 7 engines. While sir has mentioned, let me take a cue and repeat one part of this. The 7 engines are the time consumers or the time relievers. What are those? Roads, transport, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways, and logistics infrastructure. If only these 7 engines are properly laid out, properly operational with fuel. Fuel is what? Approvals, facility, and movement, interconnectivity. Once these 4, the movement of the goods, the movement of the transportation of the people and goods will be very smooth and with a cost effectiveness. And the cost of good can come down by about 17% on an average in India for every good. That is what the basic estimates spoke about. So if only you could achieve this, you are achieving, or you are speaking about a saving of 17% of the cost of all the goods. That is the focus of this logistics connectivity. We spoke about multimodal connectivity is the focus of logistics. Today, let us imagine self-lubricating bushes need to be imported by you from Japan, or let's say from US. How do you import? There is a flight from one country to the port of the final departure in the exporting country. From there, the goods sail and take the seaport route up to, let us say, Jawaharlal Nehru port, seaport, JNPT, Port Trust, JNPT Mumbai. From JNPT Mumbai, it has to move either in the internal waterways or by virtue of railways and have to reach your Sanat Nagar container depot, which is a dry port. And from this dry port, the goods have to move on the road, let us say from here to Ramagundam. And what are we talking about? We are speaking about all the modes of transportation: air, rail, sea, road, everything. Now, if there has to be such kind of transportation, multimodal transportation, the approvals, the lag, the unloading and the loading, because of lack of standard or uniform boxes, is all taking close to 55 to 60% of the time of the movement of the goods. If only there is an integration of all those things, at least in terms of approval and in terms of movement of the standardization of the cargo, then the goods could move faster and reduce the cost. That is the essence of this, or essence or object of this program. Agriculture is given a bit more, not much funding commitment, but a bit of digital push. I said, yeah, this deserves a mention. All of you know that Ken-Betwa is one among the world's largest river linking projects, with a budget upward of 45,000 crores. When it was announced last year, in fact. The two rivers, Betwa and Ken, both tributaries of Yamuna, one in UP, one in Madhya Pradesh, are connected. Can you guess what is the benefit? What is benefited by the government? Close to 10 lakh hectares of land could be irrigated. Close to 60 lakh population will receive drinking water supply. Around 130 megawatts of renewable energy by virtue of a natural headroom created by the project. These are the targets. These appear to be very tall claim. Even if a bit of that is achieved, half of it is achieved, it's definitely a fantastic project. Then 5 more such projects are being examined for the viability, and we could see at the end of the day there is education. Everything is digital now. Interesting mention. Honorable Minister has made a mention of digital word 35 times. In hardly 15-pager speech of her, she used digital word 35 times. Innovative financing about 6 times. Even education is given a digital push. So your professors will not spend so much of time explaining all of the chapters, but guide you by explaining at length the critical parts of the chapter. You could listen directly to the author of the book, author of the theory, propounder of the theory or the formula. The expression part with the human touch and the clarifications and the one-to-one guidance can all come from the professors. Health, yes, not much of additional allotments. The past allotments are in fact slightly reduced, but push is given to the digital and all-inclusive welfare focus. FSME now, no new allotments, but it is a bit of revampment is announced. Extension scheme and revamping the credit guarantee trust scheme for the MSME sector. Those are the two highlights of this. Ease of doing is facilitated. This we discuss how the deficit is being funded. Support to states we discuss. Railway infrastructure. That's it. So we are done and we can take any questions should there be any.
Thank you, Kishore. That was a very exhaustive and very well presented budget. The budget seems to be on your fingertips. You are so thorough. And thankfully, I think all professors and we could follow the terminology because we are familiar with it. But for students, I think it's very difficult because the budget was given at a jet speed. But I understand you had so much in mind that you had to go at that speed. So I am familiar with all the concepts that you have used, whether it is crowded in, crowded out, of deficit, etc. So thankfully, you touched the education part of it. I was worried whether you would touch it or not, because when I was reading the budget, I went through this digital university, the concept. I thought it would be a competition and we have to build up our competitive edge in order to meet the challenges from the digital universities and other platforms. But it's a great opportunity, nevertheless, for the students to make use of external sources, resource persons. So they'll have access to information. That is really wonderful about the digital university. And the mention that you made about the 7 engines and the cost cutting exercise, I think this is very important for a nation. Cost competitiveness is very, very important. And perhaps the cost would be very less if all the 7 engines really pull the transportation, our infrastructure and other things. Then one more thing you were mentioning about the GDP, 9.2%, very optimistic. But what I always feel that GDP growth is nevertheless important for measuring the country's development and economic progress. But the fruits of development should reach everybody. That is more important. So the distribution part of it is very important. And I think budget also should take care of this aspect, because the development should everybody, especially the bottom 10%. Okay, so that is really great. You touched upon, I think, all aspects. You didn't leave the aspect of the budget. That is really great, Kishore. And I enjoyed your presentation. And it gave so much of insight, especially about the impacts that goes behind the budget. That is the shortest time of 4 to 5 months is, of course, even we didn't know about that ERP usage. It was an enlightening fact for us. I enjoyed. I hope everybody enjoyed. And if Srinivas sir is there, can I request him to give his observations now? Srinivas sir present. Okay. I think we should not waste the time of our finance minister to be in. Kishore, I consider you to be the future finance minister. You are so thorough with all the facts and figures, and also the budget process, the budget documents. You are really exhaustive. It was very good presentation, and we all benefited, even though we went through the budget. Hearing from you is really very great.
Thank you.
I think I'll request Ms. Shanti, Assistant Professor and also Coordinator for the Self-Finance BCom courses, to propose a formal vote of thanks. Shanti?
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, one and all. In earlier days, thousands of people gather in Hyderabad state, Mumbai, to listen to the analysis of union budget by late Nani Kalkiwala, eminent jurist, economist, and scholar. Now, with the advent of technology, with the people like our speaker now, willing to share their knowledge with Mahila Sabha College of Arts and Science, I profusely thank Dr. Kishore N.K., Vice President, Finance, Meenakshi Group, for sparing his time and for sharing his analysis on union budget for 2020 and for imparting the students and to faculty of college. Sure that our students will be enlightened and enriched by this session. Sir, we look forward for your guidance even in our future webinars. I also thank Professor Usha ma'am, our chairperson, and Professor Srinivas sir, our secretary and correspondent, for their encouragement and valuable guidance, which is the main source behind this program. I also thank Dr. K. Jhansi Rani, in charge principal of Andhra Mahila Sabha College, and Professor A. Nakula Reddy Garu, Director Self-Finance Courses, for organizing this knowledge-enhancing session. I also thank Mrs. Shakuntala Jain ma'am, Coordinator BBA, and Srimati G. Himabindu, Professor Economics, and our co-faculties, because for their invaluable contribution in making this session a very successful one. I would like to thank and conclude by wishing our students and believe that now they are better equipped with knowledge on budget after this session. It is my strong will and desire too. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Stay safe. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks to all of you. Usha ma'am, thank you again, ma'am, please.
Thank you so much, Kishore. I should thank you from the bottom of my heart.
My pleasure, ma'am. My pleasure.
And my blessings to you, because I'm older to you. I'll definitely.
Yes, sir, yes.
pass on my blessings to
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Yes,
And
ma'am.
you should reach, a great position in your career also, not just vice president. You should go beyond that. And I wish you all the very best. Kishore, thank you so much.
Thanks for your blessings, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
So thank you, Usha madam, for attending the program and also presided over the program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Shall we close, madam? And thank you all the coordinators, Shekuntala madam, and also Shante madam, and also Bindu madam. Uh, uh, thank you, Savitri madam, for participating in the program, and also other friends who also joined this program. Thank you very much. Professor Pratap Reddy sir also. Thank you. Thank you all. Hope to see the same kind of cooperation in the coming days also. Thank you. Madam, close the Dhamma, madam. Shall we close the program? Madam. Yeah, then. Okay, Shanti madam will close the program. Okay. Yeah. So, thank you, youngsters.